Greetings. I'm Pastor Eric Smith. Grace and peace to you. This is The Message.
The Psalms are a collection of worship literature originally used in worship and for personal devotion. The last of them were written 2,500 years ago. Their writings spanned a period of 6 centuries, stretching from the days of Solomon's temple to after the Babylonian exile. Psalm 100 is an act of devotion and a song of thanksgiving. Listen to these worshipful words of gratitude passed through the centuries to us from an ancient faith community. Make a joyful noise to the Lord, all the earth. Worship the Lord with gladness. Come into his presence with singing. Know that the Lord is God. It is he that made us, and we are his. We are his people and the sheep of his pasture. Enter his gates with thanksgiving and his courts with praise. Give thanks to him. Bless his name. For the Lord is good. His steadfast love endures forever, and his faithfulness to all generations. Let the church hear what the Spirit is saying.
Thanks be to God. Will you now join with me in the preparation? Come, Holy Spirit, come with the fire and burn, come with the rain and cleanse, come with the light and reveal. Convict us, convert us, consecrate us, until we do something. Well, last week I was talking about the house that we lived in. I lived in as a child over on 10th Street, but the other house, which was really the growing up house, the biggest growing up house, was on the corner of 7th and I. We had a next door neighbor whose name was Eunice Gay. That was her name. Kind of a character. She was probably in her 60s. I think she had been widowed. I didn't know. I'm a teenager. I'm not paying attention to a lot of those things. But she had one of those voices that I did recognize that it was kind of a gravelly voice, that kind of represented, I think it represented lots of cigarettes and bourbon. one of those kind of voices. Well, she was friendly and she was outgoing, and there was this moment when several of my friends gathered in the living room of our house, which was in the front of the house. Piano was there, and we're having a jam session. We're playing along and making lots of noise, probably not very good, but having lots of fun. And all of a sudden, we hear a trumpet blasting from our front porch, and it's Mrs. Gay playing trumpet along with us. Now, the thing was that I'm a teenage boy at that time, and I'm not sure that I responded in the most receptive way. I don't think I actually said anything, but I was aghast and I was kind of put off, But in any case, we carried on from there. She didn't stay. That was, at that time, that was okay. I feel a little bit badly about it now. Well, we come around a few months later, and it's birthday time, and Mrs. Gay brought a present over for me. Now, this is not a person that I was really, wanting to be attached to. But lovely lady though. But so she brought over this gift, and it's all wrapped up. So I opened up this thing, and inside of it, in the little box, there is a John Wayne commemorative medal. Now, I was not a big fan of John Wayne, although I did watch the movies. I think he did a good job there, and so I just wasn't feeling a lot of gratitude. I guess that would be the way to put it. Sad but true. I'm just telling you the truth here. So my youngest sister, Casey, comes up to me. She's 6 years younger. She comes up to me shortly after. She folds her arms and looks at me and says, "Eric, if somebody gave me a gift, I don't care what it is, I'm going to be grateful, and you should too." Right? Good job, Casey. Well, this remembrance came to mind as I was working on the sermon this week. Thanksgiving is my favorite holiday. I like it. I like it best of all of them. And so I'm working on the sermon, and the truth is, I'm really not feeling it. I'm really not feeling that thing. And I'm trying to think, well, why is it? Because I'm not an ungrateful person. Why is it that I'm not with it this year? And the truth is, and it's clear to me, and I share it just for, well, just so that you know, for authenticity's sake here, the reason that it is because I'm coming up, next week, 8 days from now, I'm going to go in and get surgery on the broken humerus that was 21 months ago that has been an issue for me every day since that time. And the surgery represents, as far as I can tell, 3 steps backward in dealing with this thing in order to be able to go forward.
Yeah.
So it's a report. I've just not been able to get into the feeling part of it, mostly because I'm irritated. So the sermon was been a pretty good exercise for me to work on this thing. Pretty good about gratitude when you're not really feeling it. So off we go. Well, Thanksgiving is a God thing. The biblical stories express gratitude for God's blessings, God's faithfulness, and God's provision for life. It shows up in the prayers, it shows up in the worship, it shows up in the celebrations, many of them, of God's goodness. The scripture, the psalm that Karen read for us, is one example. Enter his gates with thanksgiving and his courts with praise. Give thanks to him. The New Testament writers repeat over and over these words. Give thanks to the Lord. Give thanks in all things. When you take faith down to its essence, the very essence of faith, what you find is thanksgiving, gratitude, always, when you're feeling it and when you're not. Every time I go visit in the hospital here, Coronado, I think of my mother. She was the head nurse of the ER back when that hospital opened. She was a warm-hearted person of faith, and she genuinely loved people. She used to say that she loved working in the ER because you never knew who was going to walk through the door next. Well, one day an older couple walked through the door in the ER, and the woman's name was Mary Cowan. She and her husband traveled in thear RV all over the country. I think we would call them snowbirds. She needed a B12 shot. So my mother, Marcia, took care of her. They chatted away for a few minutes, and Mary got her B12 shot. Off they go, traveling again. 6 months later, the ER doors open. In walks Mary Cowan, and my mother says, "Hello, Mary." Months after their first and only 15-minute encounter. Now, not too long after that, Mary and her husband decided their travel days were over, and they moved to Coronado, where she and my mother became close friends. I only know this story because a couple of years later, I had decided I was going to go into ministry, and the first requirement that I had facing me was to get a college degree. I got to finish it. At least there was purpose. Now I could go to college, Well, my parents didn't have the money for the tuition at that time in their lives, and Mary decided she would help. She wrote a check for a year's tuition. She wrote it because of her gratitude, which really didn't have anything to do with me. Gratitude is a God thing. Some say we come to worship or to the Thanksgiving table to thank God for what we've been given and forgiven, and that in doing so, it's somehow in some way pleasing to God that we do this. Well, perhaps it is. I couldn't say for certain myself, but I can say for certain that this is something deep and profound. Gratitude is an expression of faith emerged in response to the things that God did for God's people. The gift of life, the beginnings, with Abraham and the promise of blessing, with Isaac and the realization of that promise, with Jacob and his sons, then Moses and the Hebrew exodus from Egypt, and stories, thanksgivings with Elijah and David and Solomon, ultimately a new covenant through Jesus. The biblical writers who tell all these stories, they summon people of faith to recognize what God has done, to participate and receive the benefits of these actions, of God's actions, to nurture this grace of God in our souls, and to share it just with who we are and how we live. One of the things I'm periodically called upon to do is to help family members plan a memorial service for a loved one. Sometimes folks know exactly what should take place. Then there are other times I'll meet with a family and they don't really know what they want to have happen, so we talk about it. And then we decide. And I always have some things to suggest. One of the things that I ask family members to do is to name the attributes of the person that they love, that they lost. Just, one word, 2 words, a phrase, something like that. Something that describes them. A list might sound like this. She was warm, she was caring, she was honest, she loved her family, she was a great cook, she enjoyed camping, she loved the crossword puzzle, she was funny, she baked the most exquisite chocolate cake. You get the idea, like that. Well, you want the standout qualities of a person, and when it comes time to share those in their memorial service, everybody appreciates that so much. So here's what I want to, all that said, here's what I want to put to you. Imagine the time has come for your loved ones to meet with me, and I ask them to go through this exercise like I've just shared with you, naming all of the words or phrases that describe you. What will the people who know and love you best say was true of you? Will any of the words or phrases they use to describe you be grateful? Maybe that will be the case. Maybe not. And how might you change if you decided to live in such a manner that the people who know you best and love you most describe your most noticeable trait as being grateful? What would happen in you? Gratitude, thanksgiving, is basic spirituality. Basic spirituality. It's not a practice of spirituality. It is spirituality. It's not transient like a feeling. It's a choice. It's a statement of character. You put yourself in gratitude, kind of like yoga for your soul. Makes you feel good, makes you stronger, makes you relate to life in a healthy manner. It affects everyone around you, makes you feel in touch with God, and you are. Do it enough, and it will become a celebrated trait of your character. Because gratitude connects you to others in a wonderful manner. It opens your heart, which in turn opens others' hearts. It makes you whole. Gratitude makes you whole and extends an invitation into your wholeness and out of your wholeness to all those around you. There's a writer, beloved teacher of spirituality named Pema Chodron. She's Buddhist. She wrote this book called Start Where You Are. And one of the chapters is titled, Be Grateful to Everyone. Everyone? She goes on with it. The slogan is not wishy-washy and it's not naive. It does not mean that if you're mugged on the street, you should smile knowingly and say, oh, I should be grateful for this. What it means is that all situations teach you. And it's often that the tough ones teach you best. Jesus said it in a way that's more familiar to us. He said, love your enemies. Be grateful to everyone. Be grateful for them. It's a thanksgiving. It's a God thing. One more story here. Carlisle Marney was a notable pastor of the 20th century. He told this story about a bright, beautiful young woman who, because of an auto accident involving a drunk driver, became an almost voiceless quadriplegic. She was confined to a wheelchair, but she inhabited a wonderfully wide and exciting world. Well, she had a visitor one day, an unthinking sort, who asked her if she ever wanted to end it all. The woman replied, she had light in her eyes and a smile on her face. She said, I would not have missed being alive for anything. Gratitude is not really about our circumstances or about our feelings. I'm going to keep that in just a few moments now. We're going to share the sacrament of the Lord's Supper. The sacrament of the Lord's Supper is this very holy thing. Some of you come from faith backgrounds that celebrate the sacrament every Sunday. The churchy term for it is the Eucharist. You've heard that word, Eucharist. It's used in Anglican and Catholic and Orthodox communities. This is the Eucharist. It's a Greek word, and I'll bet you can guess what it means. It means thanksgiving. The most holy practice of the church is Eucharist.